Hello out there from the Badger Rock Garden. Here we are. It's about mid-April, which is when we usually get the very first of our potato crops in the ground. So we are here with our Badger Rock Farm and Assistant Farm and Education Manager,
hmm
Forrest Smart, to show us the ropes for planting potatoes.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So we'll be planting some potatoes today. It's about mid-April, which is perfect timing for cold season planting. And potatoes are great because they do well in cooler temperature soil. So they produce better when they're in colder temperature soil. So that's why April is a good time to start planting potatoes. And these potatoes we plant today, they'll be ready about mid-July, I'm guessing, or so. And yeah, they're just a great early season crop. Get in before all the other seedlings go in as well. So yeah, let's talk about potatoes. Like,
Let's
what is a
do it.
tomato? So we got a variety here. This is a blue variety. I just went rolling. This is Magic Molly, blue variety. So as you can see, these are seed potatoes. They've been bred just for to be planted as seeds. So they're not little seeds like you'd imagine for regular planting. They just come as a potato. So kind of like when you leave potatoes in your closet or wherever you store your potatoes at home, they get old, they start sprouting. That's pretty much what we have right here for a seed potato. So they have what they call the eyes right here. They're starting to grow out of all these little dimples on the potato. So they're mostly on the top right here, but there's also some on the bottom. They haven't sprouted yet, but these will be where some eyes will come out as well. And so when planting potatoes, you can just plant a whole potato right in the ground. Otherwise, we can also do a bucket method. So we have like a 5-gallon bucket, or if you have planting pots, we can also fill those and you can plant them in there as well. But first, we can also maximize our yield with these potatoes. Instead of just planting one whole one, we can also cut them in half, and then you'll be able to plant them in the ground as two. The kind of deal with that, though, is when you cut them in half, we obviously have two potatoes now, but because we cut it in half, the flesh is very vulnerable. So if we were to plant this in the ground right now, it would be a little bit more accessible to diseases. So it is kind of recommended that you cure your potatoes if you cut them in half. So just storing them in a dry, cool place for maybe a day or two, just so they can kind of get a little callus around them and they'll be easier or less vulnerable to diseases. But if
Those
we
are so beautiful. Look at those purple potatoes. Did you all
purple,
know they come in purple? Wow, it's awesome.
mm-hmm. So next, now that we have our potato seed picked out and cut and cured, if we actually did want to cure these, you can also just throw them in the ground as is. Most likely they'll end up growing. Sometimes they might rot, but just kind of trial and error method. But we can do two methods of planting. We can plant straight into the garden beds, or else we can also fill up one of these buckets about halfway full of soil. So we'll do both methods right now. So in order to plant in the ground or right into this garden bed, you'll just want to dig a trench, roughly about 6 to 12 inches, maybe a foot or so. For kind of an easy measurement, we have our garden shovel, spade shovel. I'd say the whole blade is about maybe a foot long. So if we just want to go full shovel length in, start digging out a trench. Normally we just put the soil to the side, but since we're trying to do it in the bucket method, we'll actually fill up one of these buckets as well. Get a little trench going. So filling that up. That looks about full for now. So I'll do just a
And
little
Forrest,
more.
where can people get seed potatoes or potatoes to plant?
So you want to find maybe just a garden center or any kind of seed store, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it may be, wherever is trusted source you can get seeds at. I'm sure seed potatoes will be there as well. But also, if you just go to your local supermarket, grocery store, if you can get organic potatoes, those will actually be ready as well if you just let them sit out. I believe it's called chitting. Is that the word, people? Yeah. But basically, just letting them sprout on their own. Let them get older, sprout on their own. Then you'll have seed potatoes as well. But you just want to make sure that they're organic, not regular, traditional non-organic potatoes.
Conventional ones.
Yeah. We'll dig our trench. I'll just move this dirt to the side. And so with planting potatoes, we want about 6 to 12 inches deep and maybe about a foot to a foot and a half apart. So we'll plant about 4 or 5 potatoes here. That'll be good. So we'll grab our seed potatoes. So if we want to do these, again, you can cure these before, but we'll just try them just as is. You want to make sure that the eyes are facing upward, because then these will eventually sprout into the plant. And any other roots to the side, they'll just kind of plant into the roots, which will grow into tubers or more potatoes. So for these, we'll just plant them eyes down or eyes up. Same one, about a foot and a half apart. And these ones, we'll just put in whole. Again, we'll have the eyes facing upward. And then just like any other plant, we just want to cover them up. And there you go. You got keep saying tomatoes. Planted potatoes in the ground. And then if we go over to our bucket that we filled up with soil, you want about maybe a little bit over halfway, about halfway filled with soil. And then same method, we'll just take our potato, make sure the eyes are up, go maybe about 3-6 inches down, make sure it's covered up, put a little more soil in. And there we go. Got to plant it in the seed bucket. But one thing I forgot to mention is if you do use the bucket method, kind of like this pot, it's got holes in the bottom. You just want to make sure there's well drainage so when you are watering, it doesn't get saturated with water. Because if potatoes have too much water, they tend to rot really easily. That's probably the biggest thing. You just want to make sure you don't have too much water with your potatoes. And then, yeah, that's pretty much all planting potatoes.
And you wait. And how do you know, Forrest, when they're ready to harvest? Like, what are some hints the plants gives you?
So the plants will actually come up above the ground. They'll have the leaves and everything, and once it's mature and potatoes are ready, the leaves will start to die back, they'll start to wilt, and then pretty much once the plant fully dies, you'll know that the potatoes are ready. And if you want to harvest them right then and there, you can. But otherwise, as long as your soil remains relatively dry, I think for like 3 to 6 months, potatoes can just stay in the ground. So if you don't want to harvest them right away, you wait that long, they'll be good to go. Just want to make sure not a lot of moisture, not a lot of water.
And every year after we harvest our potato breads, the next season, we always miss a couple and they pop right on back up. So they are very hardy. They can overwinter in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want to talk about hilling potatoes and that piece too?
So there's also the method of hilling potatoes, which would be as they start to grow, we'll just add more soil around our plant just to keep more space, keep loose soil so more tubers can grow out, more potatoes can grow. And then it also just retains moisture as well. And so you don't have to water as much. And yeah, hilling just kind of extends and maximizes yield as well. So it's not necessary, but it is recommended.
Awesome. We have once grew potatoes in garbage cans and planted them in the bottom in a little soil and just added a bunch of straw to hill them over the course of the season. And when the season was over, we dumped the garbage can out, all the straw fell out, and nice clean potatoes. And that's another little method you can try.
Nice. A little cleaner, don't have to dig through the soil as much.
Yeah.
And then for harvesting too, since potatoes are underneath the ground, it will have to loosen up the soil. Best method is probably getting a garden fork or a pitchfork, whatever it may be, coming in from like the sides of the bed, coming down under and just loosening the soil, and then digging through our soil eventually to pull out our potatoes.
Yeah, otherwise you end up chopping them in half by accident.
Chopping them in half, puncturing them.
Yeah.
And they're more easily rotten. Kind of a throwaway potato at that point. So just be careful. But a couple of lost soldiers isn't a bad thing. Happens to everybody.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do another workshop later in the season when we harvest on harvesting and curing potatoes. So keep tuned for that one. And it's so easy, you all. Get your potatoes in, bucket in the ground. And Forrest, thank you so much for the lesson.
No problem.
And everybody, get those potatoes in there. It's time. It's time. It's one of the first things we can get in there.
Mm-hmm.
And over here we have our garlic popping up also. So things are happening out here in the Badger Rock Garden.
Awesome. Happy gardening, everybody.
Yeah,
get your
tune in
potatoes
next time.